ABC Evening News with Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. The heaviest fighting of the past 2 weeks continued today, 25 miles northwest of Saigon. Men of the American 25th Infantry Division, joined by men of the 101st Airborne Division, killed at least 147 North Vietnamese regular forces in fighting yesterday and today around Trung Bang. U.S. casualties were 8 dead and 13 wounded in the fighting there. The rapid evacuation of wounded in Vietnam has saved thousands of lives, and tonight we have a powerful portrayal of what is really a routine operation in the war. 58 miles southwest of Saigon, the 3rd Brigade of the 9th Infantry Division ran into a battalion of Viet Cong. The Americans called for reinforcements, but 3 helicopters carrying troops were shot down. Another helicopter from the 45th Medical Company was sent to evacuate the wounded who were still under fire. We now go aboard that rescue helicopter.
Primarily because of the fast action of this medevac, all of the 11 wounded soldiers survived. This incident is another example of how fast medical evacuation means the difference between casualty and fatality. This is Craig Spence, ABC News, Dong Tam, South Vietnam.
The man who wins the election next month will be not only the next president, he will also be the commander-in-chief. In time of war, that is a special and very heavy responsibility. President Johnson today indicated what it has meant to him. ABC's Bill Downs reports from Washington.
The president made his annual pilgrimage to the Pentagon today to honor defense employees for military cost-cutting. But there was something special about today's mission. After 40 years in Washington, Lyndon Johnson obviously was preparing himself for the inevitable goodbye.
Whatever we have done together, we've done because we thought it was right. And the pressures of the moment, the propaganda of the time, and the criticism of superiors and inferiors, wherever they might be, have never deterred the loyal soldiers in uniform or the civilians who support them from carrying out their orders and doing their duty for the land that they care so much about. You are a very special people to me. You have been with me in sunshine and sorrow, and you've given me strength when I needed it most. And as I meet with you perhaps for the last time, I want each and every one of you to know that some may have fallen by the wayside and some may have changed their minds. But the Department of Defense, as exemplified by this great record that you have written here, has never failed me, and what's more important, never failed their country. So as your president and as your commander-in-chief, I have proudly come here this morning to salute you.
You're suddenly shapelier. You're suddenly shapelier. You're suddenly shapelier in a Playtex Cross Your Heart bra. Its secret? This Playtex shaping crosses your heart with stretch to lift and separate. You're suddenly shapelier in a Playtex Cross Your Heart bra. You'll see. Get one and pass the word. You're suddenly shapelier. You're suddenly shapelier.
Announcing a comfortable way to look 5 pounds thinner. The new 5 pounds thinner girdle by Playtex. Prove it yourself. Fingertips so. Press in. See? The new Playtex girdle has fingertip panels to hold you in firmly. Yet it's so different. Feels like nothing you've ever felt before. Look 5 pounds thinner without losing a pound.
Also from Playtex, Golden Girdles. Now on sale. Save $2.
In Prague today, the Presidium of the Czechoslovak Communist Party met to discuss the conditions demanded by the Soviets in order to restore what the Russians call normalization of the country. Reports from Prague indicate that Party Secretary Alexander Dubček and other Czech leaders may resign. And sources in Prague said tonight that a lower-level Czech delegation has left for Moscow for further negotiations on the treaty legalizing the occupation of Czechoslovakia by Soviet troops. Vice President Humphrey said today that the Russians have a major responsibility to see that Hanoi negotiates seriously to bring an end to the war in Vietnam. Mr. Humphrey said he intends to make sure the Russians fulfill that responsibility once the bombing of North Vietnam comes to a stop. The Vice President made his remarks before a conference of editors and publishers at the United Press International in Washington. Mr. Humphrey also promised that if he is elected, there will be a new diplomacy in dealing with the Russians.
As president, I will ask the Soviet leaders to join with us in regularly scheduled annual meetings, working meetings at the highest level. Why? Because we share with the Soviet Union a special parallel responsibility conferred on us by our awesome power. A power that must be used for peace. I propose to make these informal meetings into forums for a new diplomacy, free of publicity, free of high expectations that surround these rather dramatic, irregular summit meetings. I'm trying to tell you that I shall be a peace president, recognizing that peace is not weakness, nor is it indecision, that it requires firmness as well as understanding and flexibility.
George Wallace is on a campaign swing through New England today. In contrast to the heckling he received in Baltimore last night, Wallace faced relatively small and quiet crowds today in Connecticut and later in Boston. Richard Nixon was in Flint, Michigan today, where Wallace has shown strength among labor union members. Nixon told voters not to waste their ballots on the third-party candidate. As the campaign builds to its climax, Nixon is concentrating more and more on the states with the big blocks of electoral votes. ABC's Ted Koppel covered last night's Nixon rally in upstate New York.
The War Memorial Auditorium in Buffalo, New York. And Nixon's knocking them dead. As this campaign wears on, it's not so much what he's saying anymore as where he's saying. More and more, the emphasis is on location, the big states, the big cities. These are the places where Nixon lost the presidency 8 years ago. But this time around, it's where he's enjoying his strongest support. The polls show Nixon way ahead in cities with a population of over 1 million. This place, Buffalo, has a little over 1 million in its metropolitan area. There are just 4 weeks left to this campaign. Nixon is so far ahead that it's almost impossible to imagine him losing the election. But this is a dangerous time in which to start drawing final conclusions. And so the Nixon campaign, rather than coasting, begins now to move into high gear. And this week's schedule, covering New York, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, California, and Texas, really confirms that no one on the Nixon staff is taking anything for granted. This is Ted Koppel, ABC, with the Nixon campaign in Buffalo, New York.
Next, a report on the race to the Senate from the state of New York.
Men's fashions have taken a turn for the brighter. They've created a new man. And for the new man, Rob Lee introduces a new shoe. A bold new boot, strapped and buckled. Brawny leather with a blast of brass. A squared-off look with European accents. Rob Lee, the new shoe for the new man.
You see it, and secretly you envy it. The Naturalizer walk. In Naturalizer shoes. Isn't that lovely? Smooth, trim naturalizers. The shoe with the beautiful fit. The Naturalizer walk. So lovely that even other women watch.
Senator Eugene McCarthy tonight delivers his first completely partisan political speech since the convention. McCarthy will speak at a fundraising dinner in New York for Paul O'Dwyer, the Democratic candidate for the Senate. O'Dwyer refuses to support Vice President Humphrey because of the Vice President's stand on the war, and of course McCarthy has not yet indicated whether he will support Mr. Humphrey. Vietnam is an issue in the New York senatorial campaign. Basically, it is a three-way contest between a dove, Republican Senator Jacob Javits, a super dove, Paul O'Dwyer, and a super hawk, Conservative Party candidate James Buckley. ABC's Sam Donaldson has been following the campaign in New York and files this report.
One is that you have to have a greater restraint.
The incumbent Senator, Jacob Javits, moves through this campaign with the assurance of a man who has never lost an election and does not believe he's going to lose this one. In seeking a third term, Republican Javits counts on the liberal and Jewish vote in the city, plus traditional upstate Republican support. He stresses his seniority, his civil rights record, and his opposition to the present Vietnam policy.
There's a vast difference between my opponent and myself with respect to what I regard to be the chief issue of this campaign, the war in Vietnam.
Paul O'Dwyer, a Gene McCarthy anti-war Democrat, surprised everyone by winning the primary. Like McCarthy, O'Dwyer is the hero of the college campus. A battler for labor, he finds labor leaders endorsing Javits. Once a gun runner for the Israelis, he sees the Jewish vote locked up by Javits. O'Dwyer hopes an army of youthful doorbell ringers can help him produce another surprise. The Conservative Party has fielded James L. Buckley, brother of columnist editor William F. Buckley. Javits may be his target, but Buckley will probably hurt O'Dwyer more. He is a Vietnam hawk.
And I think it might be refreshing to hear your views as to, number one, the morality of our involvement, and number two, as to the best way to disengage ourselves.
I think, personally, that the only thing that is immoral about sending
American men to die in Vietnam is to send them there if we do not have the will to win.
I'm sure there are questions, and if you'll allow me, I see a young man with an O'Dwyer button way back there. I'm going to have him ask the first question.
Javits says he's for a negotiated settlement in Vietnam and for a total halt to the bombing of the North. But there's always someone in the crowd who asks about O'Dwyer's charge that Javits is a Johnny-come-lately to the anti-war business.
His question, I'll give you his question first. He says, how can I reconcile my position as being against the war in Vietnam with the fact that I have been off and on about it for a long time and have only followed the whims and desires of the people of New York as I read them? Is that correct, sir? Have I made your speech well? I made it well. Right. All right. Now, the whole difficulty with the young man's statement and the young man's question is that it's factually wrong. That's all. Otherwise, it's fine.
Javits says he's consistently opposed the bombing since February of '67. Why then, he's asked, does he support Richard Nixon? Because Nixon can best end the war, he replies. Paul O'Dwyer does not support his party's presidential nominee, saying it would be a sellout of his peace principles if he endorsed Hubert Humphrey. But many Democrats, including some party leaders, are doing unto O'Dwyer as he is doing unto Humphrey.
I haven't heard you say, who is your candidate for the President of the United States? You must have a candidate. You must have somebody you're going to vote for. May we be a party to this knowledge?
See, that's what many of the members, the elders of my party have told me, that I must do that and I must do this. And I don't have to do the things that they tell me to do at all. I have rejected that concept.
I would like very much to support O'Dwyer as the candidate, the Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate. But I feel this, that unless he can come out and support Humphrey, I don't tend to concentrate any campaign on his behalf.
Maybe I just ask one more question, then I'll yield the mic. Just one more thing. Then, can I take it then that you will back no one for the President of the United States?
You may take whatever you want from the things that I have told you. I have told you precisely what my position will be. If you are suggesting that I will back nobody, you come to that conclusion, that is, I will not vote for Mr. Nixon, I will not vote for Mr. Wallace, and I will not support Mr. Humphrey.
Paul O'Dwyer pushes on, hoping that somehow the new politics that Eugene McCarthy discovered can work for him here in New York State. But most observers say he's far, far behind. And with 1 month left before the election, few give him any chance of unseating Jacob Javits. This is Sam Donaldson, ABC News on Coney Island.
In a moment, guest commentator Bill Moyers speaks up for young protesters.
Water, polish, long, hard work. The only way to get the bright shine the Marines call a spit shine. Until now, until Johnson Wax discovered how to mix water with polish for a shine that's spit polish bright without the work. You can see the water beads right in the polish. You can see them on your shoe. Now buff up a shine that's spit polish bright without the work. Only from Johnson Wax.
Hi, neighbor. Oh, you're early. I know. Finished my shopping? Thought you could use some help. Oh, could I? The Bridge Club will be here any minute, and I'm just not ready. Relax. I'll finish dusting. Thanks. Good chance to try out this new lemon pledge I just bought. Lemon pledge? Pledge comes in lemon, too? Does now. That's good news. Hey, look at it go. Cleans brighter than ever before, and does it so fast. Beautiful. Look at that shine. So waxy. The girls will think I've been waxing all day. And with Lemon Pledge, all I did was dust. We're here. Oh, hi.
For the beauty of waxing with none of the work, dust with new Lemon Pledge. Or new Regular Pledge. Both with new waxy bright formulas from Johnson Wax.
The Pentagon announced today that it has rescinded an order by an American general in Vietnam who decreed that his men must either salute their superior officers in the rear echelons or be shipped to the front lines for combat duty. The orders were revealed only yesterday by Major General Charles P. Stone, commander of the 4th Infantry Division. In Baltimore today, opening testimony was taken in federal court at the trial of 9 pacifists, 2 of them priests, charged with seizing and burning draft board records in Catonsville, Maryland on May 17th as a protest against the war. In his opening remarks, the prosecutor said that the morality of the war is not an issue in the case, just the facts. Defense counsel said he concedes the facts. He then likened the trial of the pacifists to those of Socrates and Jesus. Today, as yesterday, supporters of the defendants demonstrated in the streets of Baltimore. All through the presidential campaign, students have demonstrated against one candidate or another. ABC guest commentator Bill Moyers tonight has some observations on student protesters.
Student protesters can be tiresomely inconsistent. Though claiming the mantle of Thoreau, Gandhi, and King, they're outraged when they're prosecuted for conscientious civil disobedience, and they plead for immunity from punishment as Thoreau, Gandhi, and King never did. In their quest for justice, they howl down speakers, deny press coverage to their functions, and commandeer the property of others. They can be dirty, noisy, and sometimes dangerous. All this is true and annoying, but it's also true that there is much to dissent from in America. And when the rest of us were silent, the young spoke up. They spoke up against war and civil injustice, against poverty and indifference, against hypocrisy and irrelevance in our public and private institutions. While the rest of us got mad at them, or were frightened by them, we had to admit that they were right. Something had gone wrong. The question now is whether we will go on to do something about the issues they have raised. For all the dissent, the fighting in Vietnam has escalated, and students are still being drafted for a war they hate. For all the dissent, the earning power of the Negro, in comparison to the white, has declined. For all the dissent, the condition of our cities continues to worsen, and the poor remain desperate. Still, we say to the dissenters, be patient, clean up, settle down. These are vain words to people who see that after years of protest, nothing is changed. A man crying fire in front of his business does not want to be told that he's keeping people awake down the street, or even to be congratulated for sounding the alarm. He just wants the fire department to come and put out the blaze. The young will not be satisfied by admonition or praise. They're asking for the one thing that America has always done best. They're asking for action. This is Bill Moyers.
This is a molecular model of poly 1,4-cyclohexylene dimethylene terephthalate. How about that? And I'm Joanna Barnes here to tell you what this unique molecule of Codel polyester fiber means in carpets. It's so special, it's patented. Every room in your house comes alive because carpets of Codel bounce back beautifully. Even a house full of kids can't keep Codel fiber down. That's why Codel is the fastest growing carpet fiber. If you can't remember the name Codel, ask for poly 1,4-cyclohexylene dimethylene terephthalate.
We also make 2,2,4-trimethyl-1,3-pentane diol monoisobutyrate.
But that doesn't go in carpets.
Codel fiber has bounced back.
Count on Codel, a member of the Eastman Kodak family.
Senate and House conferees agreed late today on a bill to ban interstate mail-order sale of all firearms and ammunition. On the New York Stock Exchange today, Dow Jones Industrials were down a fraction. 14 million shares were traded. The New York Stock Exchange Index was down 1 cent. On the American Stock Exchange, close to 6.5 million shares were traded. The American Exchange Index was down 8 cents. Well, among sports fans today, the talk is of the World Series, professional football, and the Olympics. But we shall show you now none of these. Instead, pictures of bowling, and for a rather good reason. The pictures are of a special moment because of who the bowlers are and where they happen to be coming from and where some of them want to go, or at least one of them wants to go. They are coming, obviously, from the White House. And they are Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Humphrey, and Mrs. Edmund Muskie. The ladies bowl today in the alleys of the Executive Office Building, where Mrs. Johnson often takes part in this sport. And as you can see, all the practice pays off. Well, that's not bad at all. Mrs. Humphrey's turn. That's not bad either. It should be pointed out that, for the record, Mrs. Humphrey came from behind to win the match. In a moment, we'll have a comment on the presidential race.
This particular house features that circular design. Quite a staircase, isn't it?
The children will love it. Oh, how far is the school?
It's very convenient. Only 3 blocks.
Fine.
Like a cigarette?
Raleigh filters. I've never tried them.
Best tasting filter cigarette I've found. Now, the kitchen's this way.
They do taste good. They're certainly mild enough. You know, I've always wondered about the coupons.
They make sense. That's how I got this lighter.
Come to Raleigh Filters. Come to good taste. And remember, the famous Raleigh coupon also comes on light menthol Bel Air.
Bel Air tastes light, cause the menthol's right. Bel Air tastes light, cause the menthol's right. Just the right touch of menthol, with a white filter too.
You get a special kind of lightness when you smoke Bel Air. Special because the menthol's right.
If you're still casting about for differences between 2 of the major candidates, you might consider their respective approach to the 3rd major candidate and to his followers. Both Mr. Humphrey and Mr. Nixon have made strong statements of opposition to George Wallace. Neither, obviously, has much use for him. Hubert Humphrey says, don't vote for Wallace because he is wrong, he is a racist, and he appeals to your fears. In short, what the vice president seems to be saying is Wallace is all wet, and if you believe him and vote for him, so are you. Richard Nixon says Wallace is wrong, but he does not lecture his followers, nor does he alienate them. Now, it should be acknowledged that political candidates are not really required to go around alienating people, not if they want to win elections. Mr. Nixon invites the Wallace followers to bring their frustrations and fears to him, because he, not Wallace, can really do something about them. Today in Flint, Michigan, where Wallace is believed to have substantial support, Mr. Nixon said, do you just want to make a point, or do you want to make a change? And he said, do you want to get something off your chest, or do you want to get something done? Seems fair to conclude from all this that Mr. Nixon is saying a vote for Wallace is a waste. Mr. Humphrey is saying a vote for Wallace is a shame. That's tonight's news and comment. I'm Frank Reynolds. Good night.
Milton is a floor nut. He'd probably have me scrub every day and wax once a week. Huh. Well, I like a nice floor, too, but I don't do all that. I use this Pronto. I just squirt the foam on the floor and mop it up. Gets the floor clean and leaves a wax shine, too. And it dries in 5 minutes. Then I stack up all this stuff. Looks like I've been breaking my back. That's Milton.
Poor baby.
This has been a presentation of ABC News.